Welcome to the Bar is Loaded. My name is Danny Taylor. I'm your host. I'm alone today. It looks like Thomas has had a day off, but we have got the man, the myth, the legend, the man himself, the genius, the sports therapist at Taylor Strength Training. It's Danny Staples. Welcome to the show, Danny.
It's a pleasure to be here, Danny.
How's it going?
It's going good. This is my second coffee, which has not happened in a long time. So now I feel it percolating into me. The caffeine is coursing through my veins, and I'm actually wide awake now for the first time in a while.
So you cut down on coffee recently?
Yeah, I think it got to a point where I noticed I was jittering a fair bit in the hands. So it was one of two things. It was either it was an early onset Parkinson's disease, or I was drinking a lot of caffeine. And I think, quite frankly, the amount of caffeine was obscene.
So you've cut down. How do you feel?
Well, I feel better for doing it.
Initially, that must have been
it was horrible.
tough.
Yeah, I mean, it took probably 4 days of grueling headaches to make me realise this was a good idea. No, it was very painful. But I think, compared to any sort of detox regime, I think caffeine's a mild one. But it was still quite uncomfortable.
So now that you've cut it down, you'll have to excuse the background noise there as well. We are in an industrial estate. If this is the first episode that you've listened to, we are in an industrial park, so we have got a lot of heavy machinery and stuff going on in the surrounding units. So I do apologise for that interruption in the background noise.
Well, to be honest,
we
we use that as a
got,
joke, bit of too much caffeine, we know what happens there.
There you go. For those of you who don't know Danny Staples, he's been working with me and Taylor Strength. He's been part of the gym since the forming of the business and since we opened the doors to the gym as well back in 2015. He has been mentioned in previous bits of content as well. He's been a bit of a myth, bit of a legend in some of our videos that we've been putting up when we've mentioned the likes of the Danny Staples tangent, some of his dry humour, etc. And this is the man in the flesh. So if you are watching us on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook, this is the man. But if you are just listening to us, make sure you tune into our YouTube and Facebook streams as well, so you can put a face to the voice.
I'll tell you what, already, I can feel
The coffee
caffeine
kicked in.
Oh, massively so.
I've got the jitters already.
Well,
I had a double espresso on the bus this morning coming here, and now I'm drinking a latte.
Latte.
I think it's a latte. I don't know. Actually, don't know. Let's have a look.
There's some white in it. Do we
A
have
little bit of white, but I can't really taste the milk.
I don't want to. No.
Use your finger.
So there we go. Live on camera. I think it's definitely milk in there. I've been drinking it as well.
Good man.
Let's put that away.
Hopefully you're not lactose intolerant.
They tolerate lactose.
Well, then again, a large population of the world is lactose intolerant.
Because they pasteurise the milk and then burn out all the good enzymes, namely lactase, which helps you break down milk.
Great.
Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. Danny is a sports massage therapist, and he's been helping our athletes manage their injuries and recover from injuries over the past couple of years, about a year and a half, 2 years now. Coming up to 2 years.
I'm trying to think when I qualified now. So we're talking, I'd say informally as part of the training, I would say probably from about April of 2017, and then legally when I got my diploma, I would say that was since July of 2017, and I've been practicing ever since.
Great. Tell us a little bit more about yourself then, Dan. So your involvement with me, with Taylor Strength, and just your background in general. Like, how did you get to this point in sports therapy?
Okay, well, let's see. So I was thinking this because inevitably you're always asked this question: how did you start? And in the grand scheme of things, I'm definitely not a big player in the world of massage, but that is an aspiration I have. Training-wise, let's see. So I watched a very well-known 90s TV series called Gladiators, which was ITV, I think, approximately 5:15 of a Saturday night. And it was at that point that I realised that I wanted to get into training. So anyone who's actually heard this now, it's a secret that I've kept to myself. Of course, being a fan of anime, you see all these muscular beings, if you're talking about Dragon Ball. So obviously I wanted to look a little bit like some of these heroes on screen. And I made a promise to myself that at 16 I would start training, because a lot of people around me subscribe to the idea that at 16 your bones are matured to a point where it shouldn't be dangerous to add load to an exercise. So I started training about 16. Well, Not necessarily. There is reasons behind that, but I think, like many of these arguments, it depends. But I think that's our challenge, isn't it? Not to be so dogmatic. But I think at 16 when I started, very much just your generic sort of bodybuilding style. And as Mike Boyle once said, everyone starts off as a bodybuilder. We looked at Arnie, we looked at Sly, Stallone, and obviously wanted to try and emulate those physiques. So yeah, started training, moved to a more, it was still commercial, but it was much more free weights, heavy gym when I turned 18. And that's when I really started learning about the sort of the compound movements, the powerlifting movements, the bench press, the squat, the deadlift, the rows, whereas previously they'd all been machine based. So I still maintain you can achieve results with machines, which people may disagree, but probably a lot of people do agree now. And then really, to answer your question a bit more directly, sports therapy, I would say that was never something that I'd really anticipated that I'd get into until I injured my hamstring playing football. So it was just like a grade 1 tear, quite minor really in the grand scheme of things. So for anyone who doesn't know, grade 1 is sort of minor. You know, usually recovers between 1 to 2 weeks, generally speaking, if you do all the right things. But because I didn't do the right things and I kept training and I kept playing football, it took about a year to actually rehab it properly, and that was after some intervention from a physio. And yeah, that's probably when I started getting an idea that I would get into it at some point and planted the seed. But it wasn't until I started working where I do currently and wanted to know a little bit more about how these things work, and I thought it would be a vehicle to hopefully one day progress into physio, which has in fact happened. But it made me realise that actually it's an area that, although there's evidence for and against, I think sports massage is a very interesting field to get into, and massage in general.
So that's the short version then.
It's very much the short version.
So you mentioned that you're inspired by bodybuilding from your early years, anime, gladiators. Who's your favourite gladiator, out of curiosity?
Warrior.
I was Wolfman.
Of course. Who was afraid of the big bad wolf? The answer is everyone.
It was brilliant. Don't make TV shows like that anymore.
We don't, but then there's more than 4 channels now.
Fair. Bodybuilding then, so you mentioned some of your main inspirations there was Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone. When you first started training, was your ultimate goal to look like these guys? Did you want to compete? Because I know in conversations we've had in the past, it is something that you've maybe aspired to do 1 or 2 points in your training journey.
Well, if anyone of my closer friends listen to this, my direct quote was I wanted to be half the size of Arnie and half as defined as Bruce Lee. That was my goal at the age of 18. And I feel that I've never achieved that. But no, I think
the Frank Zane look.
The Frank Zane was the one I always aspired to. My mentor, I loved his ideas, but he didn't really look like someone you could achieve naturally. Whereas Frank Zane looked on the surface that you could achieve that naturally.
What weight was he walking around at?
Well, it depends what you read. 180.
Similar to you.
180 is what you tend to read. If you believe Arthur Jones and Ellington Darden, they would tell you he was around 166 pounds. So what does that make kilos wise? It's what just around 11 stone.
So around the weight that you were at the time that you were training.
Mm-hmm.
So you were able to kind of look at that and think it was more of a realistic goal because he was a similar weight to you at that time.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He just looked more pleasing on the eye rather than the likes of Arnie and Franco Columbo and I don't know what's his name.
These are the guys who, with a shirt on, you'd look at them and you knew that they were bodybuilders. You knew that they lifted, but then the likes of Frank Zane, he'd have to take his shirt off for you to realise like what he actually did. And for me, when I met you for the first time, that was the impression that I got. We used to work together many years ago. And if you listen to episode 1 of The Bar Is Loaded,
if you haven't, why haven't you?
Our Origins podcast, I spoke a little bit about what inspired me, and it's actually this man who's sitting in front of us here. He kind of ignited the flame initially. He's shaking his head. If you're watching this, you can see that he's disagreeing, but It's just because he's too modest. That's all. He was a big inspiration for me. And I didn't realise that Danny actually done any training or anything until I caught him one day taking his top off, just changing, and I was kind of, I was kind of like,
You can't say that.
you can, yeah, I was like, wow, okay, and then I started trying to pick your brain then about how to get to that level, and
Remember that well.
I started off wanting to do bodybuilding, and here we are.
Now
we're podcasting.
We're not doing bodybuilding. Yeah, no, that was an interesting period. How old was I? Let's have a look. 18. It was 17 going on 18, I think. 18 going on. No, I was in uni. Must have been around 20. Yeah, let's just say 20. I'm 31 now. 31.
Sad times.
What was the question? Sorry, we're going off again. We're going on a Danny Staples tangent.
Danny Staples tangent. That's what a Danny Staples tangent is. There's nothing wrong with that. It's all good. So you mentioned a little bit about your history. So at what point was it that you were like, why did you choose sports therapy? You mentioned that like you got your hamstring injured. You've had a couple of others quite serious injuries since then as well. The low back was one, wasn't it? I remember rightly. Back squat and training for powerlifting.
In fact, in the show notes, we can even try and do this, but we can actually put the squat on that gave me all the back troubles I experienced today.
Was it at that point then that you were like, right, I need to look into, I need to research this more and find out the reasons why people get injured, and was it that kind of avenue that pushed you towards sports therapy, or?
Yeah, but I mean, it's all, when it comes to sports therapy, it's a case of there's preventative measures you can take, and then there's measures that are outside your control. So
yeah,
trauma, you're in any sort of accident, you're going to be injured and you're going to be dysfunctional as a result, irrespective of what preventative measures you put in place. But generally speaking, an everyday individual who trains or wants to be an amateur athlete or a semi-pro, if you're good enough, if those injuries that I sustained did make me start thinking about preparation and trying to prevent these things a lot more before they present themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think of the likes of Kelly Starrett and Mike Boyle, a lot of their work, movement is medicine.
Kelly Starrett's the supple leopard.
Yeah, so that's probably what he's probably more famous
for
as he was, but he authored the book, How to Become a Supple Leopard. My current lecturer in Salford now, I wouldn't say he's a massive fan of Kelly Starrett, but he's very familiar with his work, and he's made it clear that there are pros and cons with some of his ideas, but generally speaking, if you're coming into this with fresh eyes, really good place to start. He talks about the archetype positions that we all have, and definitely when you assess people from a musculoskeletal point of view, you are using these positions to analyse if people are moving functionally or dysfunctionally. And the truth is we all move dysfunctionally anyway. You can find the best athlete in this gym and they'll be moving with dysfunction, but that doesn't mean they can't be effective in what they do. But I don't know. What was the question here? I've done it again.
It was just about how you got into it. Why did you choose sports therapy?
Sorry, yeah. So I chose it purely to prevent myself from getting hurt again. Right. I think when I tore my pec.
So it wasn't about helping people at that point, it was more just about your own research, trying to learn more about that field, so you could enhance your own training and improve your own recovery.
Well, it comes down, if you make a decision when it comes to these things, whether it's to, invent something, or whether it's to, become, I don't know what I'm trying to say now, but if you want to get good at something, there needs to be an emotional attachment to it. So it's either someone you care about is struggling with these things, or you're struggling with them personally, so it makes you try and become an expert.
There's some sort of passion in there, like
so
that ignites the fire.
At that point, bear in mind, I was still trying to compete in powerlifting. I was training for the British championships when I did my back in.
I was there that day.
Yeah, it was as it happened, it was my first proper week off from work in a long time. I got injured at the start. So that really started it all off. I'm trying to figure out, all right, what did I do wrong? What could I have done in the meantime? But I mean, the truth of the matter is powerlifting, this is controversial, but powerlifting is dangerous. I agree with Fred Hatfield when he said that it is a dangerous sport. It's evidenced by the amount of equipment that people need to use in competition to try and prevent themselves from hurting themselves, whether that's wraps, sleeves, wrist wraps, belts. You know, they are all there to try and give you extra support. And if you're lifting things that, you know, your body should be able to tolerate, you don't need these things. And then training with these things can actually accentuate these weaknesses that you have and these dysfunctions.
Okay, so for people who are listening who are interested in powerlifting, which is probably going to be a large part of our audience because we're well known in the powerlifting world now, especially in the city and within the Northwest. You mentioned then about wearing supportive equipment. Now everyone, I don't know about other Nan, because we mention everyone's Nans on every episode now.
I know.
Wears SBD knee sleeves, belts, or you know whatever it is. There's some supportive equipment. So at what point would you say that you are becoming too reliant on the supportive equipment to the point where it's having a detrimental effect on your ability to recover, or putting you in a position where if you took that equipment off and then tried to move without it, it's going to cause some more harm?
I think just off the top of my head, I think there's two things. I think if your posture, because every people's bone structures are different, obviously.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, we should be able to move in a very similar way, all being well. And if you notice that while performing these movements, that you're very sort of posturally weak or dysfunctional, just for want of better words, I'm struggling to think of any. That's a good time. I think if take the deadlift for example, if you find yourself excessively flexed forward, yes, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hurt yourself, but it's really putting a lot of excess stress throughout your body to do that. And also using wraps to make sure you can even hold the bar. I think most people, myself included, grip strength is so poor, but by using these things, it's making your body.
When you say wraps, you mean straps, as in?
Well, like wrist wraps, I'm talking about now.
Oh, wrist wraps, yeah. To create some more tension.
Yeah, to allow this, it's giving you an edge, it's making your body go above what it needs. You talk about caffeine as an example, it is a performance enhancement tool to enable you to do that lift. The moment that you're dependent on these things, I think that's an indication. And also I think as a guide, I think Dan John talks about these sort of strength, what does he call them? Guidelines, if you like. And for him, for example, someone as strong as someone who deadlift 2 times the body weight, squat 1.5 times the body weight, bench 1.5 times the body weight, overhead press the body weight. These are ideal. This makes you functionally strong. It's just an indicator. There's no major science behind it, but just as a rule of thumb, I think the moment you get over those standards, I think that's when you're going to be coming into, your dysfunctions will become very visible. And I think it's at that point that I would now personally back down a little bit, because powerlifting, to compete in powerlifting, you have to do it. And it's so competitive now that it's what people are going to do.
Everyone else is using the equipment, so you're at a disadvantage if you're not.
Exactly. But that's if you're training for a goal that's not powerlifting, then you shouldn't need to.
Okay, so just to flip that question a little bit then, you mentioned the supportive equipment can have a detrimental effect on your ability to recover and can later on cause some harm in terms of injuring your muscles or joints. So is there a fine line? Is there a silver lining? First of all, is there a way you can use equipment to benefit from the actual support of it, without it becoming detrimental to your just general functionality?
Yeah, absolutely. But it comes a point where, like a pain relief medication, is masking the problem.
So do you think it's fair to say, in your opinion, then, that people become too reliant on it and then therefore end up injured long term?
Well, I think so, but I think at that level, we could name lifters in this gym who do it at that point when they're competing. I think within the sport of powerlifting, it's a necessary supplementary piece of equipment that's going to allow you to compete.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit different. I think when you're training and you're just looking for overall well-being, which comes back to therapy, then some of these things could obviously have a positive effect because it's giving you that stability. But constantly relying on them, it's plugging a gap. It's putting some kitchen roll down a sink because you haven't got a plug.
What's the best advice then for someone who's listening to this now, who's maybe just got into powerlifting and they've bought all the kit, they want to use it, they want to train the skill as much as possible, because we both know that the mechanic of the lift changes as soon as you put the equipment on. So would you still recommend not using the equipment to retain a good level of functionality generally, as well as using the equipment if you want to be a healthy athlete but still compete? Or is it just a case of choose your poison, like you've chosen this now, you're just gonna have to deal with it, and then maybe look at like sports therapy and injury management?
Well, you know, the truth is powerlifting, it's a very, you know, the margin of error is quite high. You know, you speaking for myself, I initially injured my back competing because it was a by any means necessary, and this was with equipment, bear in mind, to get this weight up off the floor, because it's an absolute strength type of sport. So really, to try and answer your question, I would say there is absolutely no harm in training with equipment, with you know, with your knee sleeves and whatnot. Not at all. But I think what it will do is it will mask some of these underlying problems that are starting to present themselves, and you're unaware. So I know Fred Hatfield was a big advocate of training with as little assistance as possible, and then closer to competition start bringing these things in, because obviously A, it's going to condition you for the competition, but B, it's going to get you used to how you're going to feel on the day. It's getting you mentally and sort of physically prepared. So I suppose the honest answer is it depends. Personally speaking, I wouldn't, but I've always trained with minimal equipment, which is probably, you could argue, helped me get to the position I am in terms of injury problems.
Do you think there's ever a time where not wearing equipment could be detrimental? If you're trying to go for your max, or I don't know, if you're trying to push yourself to an absolute limit, would you recommend using equipment in that respect?
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it, then protect yourself.
Yeah, but in all honesty, powerlifting wise, how often do you really truly train your max?
When you're a beginner, it's quite frequently. A lot of people will try and go, especially lads with egos, will try and typically go balls to the wall from day one.
Okay,
and like try and max out every week.
Well, if you're being guided appropriately, then you very seldom try your one
every 12 weeks.
You know, your free rep max is probably as far as you go, and then after like a 12-week cycle, as you say, you might then test it. At that point, of course, you'd wear equipment, because why would you risk all the work you've put in to regress following an injury? You'd have to start up again. You speak to many people in this gym. So you use it appropriately. I think if you depend upon it throughout, in the way that people depend on caffeine throughout, then it's just sort of putting a band-aid over a problem, or a plaster. But I think if you're truly going to train these things, these maxes, then yeah, that's how you protect yourself. So the truth behind it, the answer I think is, it's just you have to judge when it's appropriate. And I think a really good example as well is, you talk about Kelly Starrett. I think he did as Mike Bell podcast where he was doing the deadlift, and there comes a point when they actually start using equipment, but the early phases of the deadlift training, they don't. So they use it when it's appropriate. But I think if you use it constantly, which you make me contradict myself, I don't know, I'd have to listen back to it now.
Yeah.
But I think if you just rely on these things, which is what I used to do, and just wear a belt, even when I was doing tricep presses, you know. Yeah, it's you got to ask yourself, why are you using it in the first place? You know, people use belts to give them a prompt to brace.
So you've always got to justify it.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
I think if you just wear them for the sake of it as a fashion statement, because you are a powerlifter, then
that is very much a thing now, which is quite sad as well. It's like, you know, the SBD wanker, you know, the full kit wanker kind of thing.
I saw Shayna do that actually. Like, oh, that was funny.
You know,
she's so timid.
You're a powerlifter now because you've got a full SBD kit or whatever. And it does become a bit of a fashion thing, which
it's cyclical, isn't it?
Has its pros and cons. It's good because it's good for the sport in terms of like its exposure and its reach, but like it kind of takes away from the core values of the sport as well, in my opinion. But let's not go off on a Danny Staples tangent.
Which we have, by the way, many times. So therapy.
That was interesting. How important is sports therapy or sports massage therapy for sports performance then in that respect?
I say wrote it, I didn't, so I made a post on my...
This is quite a broad question as well, to be fair.
I put it recently on my Facebook page that, you know, is sports massage or is massage therapy, because sports massage as a component of massage. There's different types of massage. Is that the best or the most important aspect of recovery? Well, it's not. It's part of many factors behind effective recovery. Let's say sleep, nutrition, stretching when it's appropriate. But sports massage is very much part of that, I think. So tissue management. From a psychological point of view, having a massage puts you at ease. Training is a stressful thing, regardless of its intensity. It's a stress on the body, so naturally it's going to be in a defensive mindset, whereas getting a massage, whether it's a pre-event massage, which is typically associated with increased blood flow, no deep tissue work, so you're not trying to really apply too much pressure and break down some of the deeper muscles if you can, which is very difficult to do with your hands, but people can. It's part of an all-encompassing strategy that you should have. So I think it's very important, but it's not the most important, but it should be part of your recovery strategy.
A lot of elite athletes do invest in sports massage therapy. Do you think it's overlooked at an amateur level?
Yeah, but I think that's probably more due to cost. I think one thing I say to the people I will massage here is that, prior to coming to me, how often we get a massage? And more often than not, it's either A, I've never had one, or a long time, years. I say, so you're already ahead of the game by coming here today and doing one. So if you can commit to one a month, you're ahead of the curve. Now, if you speak to most, again, amateur athletes, aspiring to get to that next bracket of semi-pro, they will maybe do one or have one once every 2 weeks because they value that it's part of their overall relaxation / tissue management strategy. And then obviously the elite level, it's part of the routine. If you go to any football side, as low as the League Two and going into the conference, they all do it as well. They all see it as a key component. Now there's evidence for and against massage. There's a lot of advocates who would state that it has no benefit whatsoever. There's no evidence to suggest that physically it helps you, but then there's evidence to the contrary. When you look at how long massage has existed in some form, you're talking 5,000 years, China, Egypt. There's got to be something to it. But I think it's overlooked, probably more to do with price than its actual benefit.
Would you say it's cost effective?
I think it is. I think if you take powerlifters in this gym, for example, and what we're lucky is we have a lot of regional athletes, national athletes, and now British athletes. And for that reason, I think what people are starting to do now is see the value of it and use it as part of the strategy and use it as part of an injury prevention model.
Okay, so for someone who's, regardless of what sport they're doing, would you recommend that they at least explore the option of sports massage therapy when they're thinking about getting into a sport? Do you think they should consider it as part of their strategy overall? Or do you think they should just start?
Well, it keeps me in a job, so yes. No, I think if money was no object.
I think the point I was trying to get to is, do you think people leave it until it's too late?
Yeah, always. Yeah, prevention's better than cure.
Okay. That's the bombshell.
Well, it is. I think that's.
But we're not going to end the show just yet, are we?
No, it's just something to cut me off.
No, we're only 30 minutes in.
Well, all right. If you take nothing from this, or you take anything from it, well, you probably will take nothing from this because no one ever does. But if you take anything from this, I think prevention is better than cure, especially with training. This is why it's really important to have a qualified coach. And I'm not necessarily saying myself, but someone who can really look at someone and break down the movements and say, you are exhibiting this pattern, which could, if left unchecked, result in an injury down the line. So we need to actually put things in place, and it may involve a massage at this point, because if you're moving ineffectively for long periods of time, if you're sitting in chairs like this where our hip flexors are getting tight and we're a little bit more flexed, it's going to make muscles much shorter, which is going to make them tighter, which is going to put more stress on other muscles, which means that massage could come in to try and loosen these things off, giving you almost like a reset to stretch these things out and really get them moving effectively again. And there are other things that are involved that I'm not intelligent enough to discuss in terms of your neurological stretching and contracting. But that's something I will be learning very soon.
So you mentioned neurological, mentioned physiological. What about psychological? What effect does it have on an athlete or people that you've worked with in the past, or some of the research that
I
you've done?
mentioned psychological, or physiological.
Well, you mentioned it's all physical, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that the physical benefits. What are the psychological benefits of having a sports massage therapist?
Well, there's the placebo effect of whatever's going to happen now, I'm going to improve.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Psychological, quite frankly, massage is quite an intimate thing.
Yeah.
We respond to touch, and obviously there's a cascade of chemical responses that happen when we come into close contact with each other. But the truth is, if you're told this is going to benefit you, then in the back of your mind, you will believe it regardless. I think what massage is supposed to do is those muscle fibers that become intertwined or where they've rubbed over each other repeatedly and they form these clumps. What you're trying to do is trying to iron them out again and get those fibers sort of going over each other effectively again. What was the question?
It's about the psychological.
Psychological, sorry, yeah. So you're explaining.
You mentioned the placebo effect.
Yeah, but you're explaining this to people and it makes
Yeah.
sense. And you go over it all, and then at the end of it, they find themselves being able to move a little bit more. I think it's psychologically, I think it comes down to, again, those 2 points. I think it's the feeling that your problems are going to be addressed, and then also this placebo effect, that you've sort of told yourself, trained yourself that this is going to benefit me. And there's a lot of people out there, whether it's with grasping techniques or whether it's gua sha or whatever, it's been around for this long now.
Do you think it's because people get an instant kind of feel-good factor from it, like they might be able to have feel some relief immediately? You think that has like a massive psychological benefit for some people, and that's why they might come back as well?
Well, some people catastrophize things, don't they?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I've seen people who, in terms of just really basic assessments of the joint movements,
Yeah.
checking the ranges, really they're not unusual in any way. They're moving quite freely, maybe some restrictions here, soft tissue restrictions, but you would expect that. And merely going up through a standard routine of just the same movements, maybe a little bit increased, which is the goal obviously, but they feel like, this has changed their lives. But they've already told themselves that, all this touch is going to make me feel better. And I'm probably not selling massage very well by saying this, but it's all part of it. It's an all-encompassing thing with massage. There is that psychological side of it, as well as the physiological side of it. But psychology is massive in massage.
Yeah.
But I think people do it badly, forget some of the processes to actually give someone an effective sports massage.
Like the whole package, physically, psychologically.
Well, you speak to some of my clients who, I'm like, you have to be with, whether it's clients or patients, you present yourself differently to different people because they respond to you more. So I've got clients who I'm very serious, very, step by step, here's what I'm doing and why. And then I have people who trust me now, but I'm very much more light-hearted. We play music, we laugh.
Yeah.
It just depends.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the individual, but I think for the most part, the psychology of how you do it. If you've got someone who's got a sense of humour and they've had a few massages now, you can do a maintenance massage if you like, and they'll still feel the benefit of it.
What's your icebreaker then? If you have got, I don't know, someone who comes in, you're not quite sure, you haven't quite figured them out, what's your icebreaker?
Just very dry humour, but also I think my favourite is, what is your favourite soundtrack to accompany a film? And that gets people thinking straight away. And yours, Danny, I've asked you this question now.
What's the question? Favourite soundtrack to accompany a film?
Is, what is
probably something to do with Star Wars. Duel of the Fates.
Now that I wasn't expecting. Tell me more.
Duel of the Fates is the theme that comes on when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon go to the fight with Darth Maul.
I remember to meet my apprentice.
You remember the sound, remember the score?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
with a hand.
I'm pretty sure we blasted it in Liam Thurston's car in town one day.
We did.
Yeah, alongside
How old were you when Phantom Menace came out?
Harry Potter. That's all I can think of.
How old were you when
Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
It was 2001, I believe. So I was
99?
Was it 99?
It was.
I should know that.
You should have
Sorry,
started
got myself there. I'm a big Star Wars nerd. For you guys who don't know already, I should know that. Very disappointed in myself.
The force is strong with this one.
Not with me today, unfortunately.
Well,
Coffee's strong, so that's good.
now I think as soon as I realised milk was in there, it's just like taking away my buzz.
I'm buzzing. I'm jittery.
But let's get back to the point because we haven't got long, have we?
We're okay. We're doing okay for time.
Then I've lied to the audience
What are the most common misconceptions around sports massage therapy then?
that it's about getting your elbow into someone
Right.
straight away.
Can you elaborate for our viewers,
Well,
our listeners?
Now I know for a fact that anyone who receives a sports massage from me is going to be like writing in and telling me that I'm a liar. But a massage really shouldn't hurt because it is the duty of the massage therapist to ask people to rate their pain as you go along.
It always tickles me, so I'm not sure whether that's just like because I'm a bit of a masochist and
No.
I kind of like a bit
Well,
of
yeah,
pain.
actually you are. But pain is subjective. You know, what hurts me might not hurt you, and vice versa.
Mm.
You know, and this is why, you know, different scales to actually identify pain, none of them are perfect, but they can at least give you an idea. So the, you know, the most common one is the one I use. So on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the worst pain you've ever experienced in your life, 0 being nothing at all, what are you, you know, where are you now? But people just presume, to answer your question, that a sports massage is just painful. You stick your elbow in, you go right in, and just try and hurt someone because it will feel better. Now you might feel better after about 5 days of bruising, which is obviously a consequence of sports
But
massage.
it does hurt more than your usual massage.
It's more uncomfortable.
So is
Should
that
be
where
more
the
uncomfortable.
misconception comes from? You
I
think?
Well, I've mentioned before about different types of massages. So you've got your Swedish massage, which is something that Karen.
Is that more relaxing?
Yeah, it's more associated with very sort of light strokes and more effleurage work. So again, you know, getting blood circulation or warming the muscle up. So it's a lot more therapeutic, a lot more, sorry, a lot more relaxing. Your sports massage incorporates those things, but it also incorporates a lot of deep tissue work. And again, you've got your superficial muscles at the top, and then you've got your underlying muscles, which are very difficult to get to. You know, you could argue that you're never really going to get to the deep muscles as effectively, but that's where you try and get some of these. So, for example, you know, the rhomboids are quite deep.
Yeah.
You know, the psoas muscle, for example, is quite deep, and it's very difficult to really access it as effectively as, say, the traps, which is quite superficial. So a misconception is that, you know, it's going to be really painful, but it is more uncomfortable than, say, a typical Swedish massage or.
And does that depend on the individual?
Well, they're all. You could go to 10 different massage therapists, and they'll all be different, which is why you tend to find someone that you trust and you know, gravitate to.
I know when I've had a massage in the past off you, I'm just sensitive, like everything.
Is this supposed to pick me up, or is this supposed to knock me down?
But what's strange is, like, for those of you who don't know, like, I practice jiu-jitsu as well a few times a week, and there's
Incredible sport.
days, it's not a sport, it's a martial art.
Oh,
It's just a self-defense.
so it's not UFC then, it's not.
There's
I
no,
suppose it.
no competitive side to it, there's no rules. It's like,
Yeah. There is one rule: make your own rules.
exactly. Eye gouges are allowed, headbutts are allowed.
Do people generally look at the camera, by the way, or am I just breaking
No,
the fourth wall?
Yeah, you're breaking the fourth wall.
Ah.
You're making it awkward.
Sure.
But anyway, yeah, for those of you who don't know, I practice jiu-jitsu a few times a week. I've been doing it for the last 8 years, and like I'm getting banged and bopped and just like thrown around.
It's skibbity bad booty. Okay.
I'm
So,
like, I'm
let
like
me ask you
getting
this.
hit, but like it's fine. But as soon as someone touches me when it's in like it's a sports massage, I'm like, ugh,
Let me ask you this:
you know,
is jiu-jitsu a sport where you incur the most injuries?
it's not a sport.
Sport. You're just saying this because it's somebody else watching this. Okay.
It's difficult
Martial
to
arts.
say if you're just doing that on its own. I think it really depends on the individual. For me, all my injuries have stemmed from crossing wires between jiu-jitsu and powerlifting and trying to balance them both.
Mhm.
That's where I've gone wrong, trying to go all in on both
Okay.
instead of just prioritising one. You can't do both full on
Well,
without crossing wires and without
I-
something happening, because one requires you to be supple, dynamic, quick, and the other one requires you to be static and strong and stiff somewhat.
Okay. So, Mike Isbertal, for example, incorporates bodybuilding and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Do you think powerlifting and jiu-jitsu is a bad marriage?
It's a terrible romance.
Head
I
straight
think
to
that's
the
where
horse.
all my injuries have stemmed from. I know I've had injuries in the past from football when I was a kid. I've had a few injuries from jiu-jitsu, the majority from powerlifting, but I think it's because I've been trying to do both in like the top gear for such a long time.
Mhm.
And I'm so stubborn and not listening to my body.
Sure. You have to get hurt before you listen to your body. And I think I mentioned it before with Mike Boyle. He has a theory that we all go through stages of training. So he says we all start as bodybuilders. You know, we all train the mirror muscles. I still do because I want to look good. That's just me. But then we all train as powerlifters because we want to get strong.
Yeah.
We then train as an injured powerlifter because we go too far. And I guarantee you now that if we got every member of this gym who powerlifts, they're carrying an injury of some kind. It's unavoidable. And we got any powerlifters in the room, they'd say the same.
Is it true that everyone's injured?
Yes.
Somewhat.
Define injury.
As in, even on a minor level. Whenever you lift a weight, if you're doing a sport, like you've got a minor injury.
I would say.
There'll be a minor tear, or there'll be a pull or something, or
Yeah, because the brain has got to receive the signal.
Yeah.
So a grade 3, for example, I was talking about grades before, a complete rupture of something generally. Like your brain will receive the message that there is pain. Get me out of this situation. You know, things like, I keep mentioning Mike Boyle, but in one of his functional training seminar series, he were talking about foam rolling specifically, which I suppose is a form of massage, it's tissue work. And he rolled a lacrosse ball with the plantar fascia, or not plantar fascia.
painful.
And it was painful, but we walk around every day and we don't experience the pain there because we simply haven't received the message. It's not threatening enough. So I think everyone's walking around in pain. It's just the signal hasn't quite. And another example is when you sort of slip discs or bulge spine. We've probably walking around with these slight, again, dysfunctions, for want of a better word, and yet until it goes or it impinges on a nerve, we don't feel it. We're all walking around with pain, but it's just the body hasn't actually acknowledged it until it's too late, usually.
I can't remember where I read it, but I don't know whether you've ever heard of this, but if you've been doing powerlifting for a few years, is it true that you've likely got a bulging disc?
Well, I've not read that. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was Will who mentioned this, and Will, if you don't know Will,
Oh yeah,
Feasendon,
he's
one of your clients, one of my clients, he's been training for probably about 20-25 years now.
Yeah.
He's been powerlifting
He
with
trained
sailors
Big
for
Willie
the
style.
last about 3 years.
Is someone doing a bleed test outside, by the way?
Sounds like. We have got we're in the gym office, by the way, for you guys who don't know. We're not just in a secluded studio. This is where the magic happens. We've got people training outside.
All
So
the
if you
magic
hear some
happens
clanking or
in
beeping,
seclusion.
it's because we've got people training outside.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Will's an absolute mess, isn't he? He's got a couple of bulging discs. He's got a degenerative end plate. I know you've worked with him a few times. Like, can't tie his shoelaces sometimes. He can barely move, but sometimes.
And let's
really
be
great.
honest. At that point, the massage can only do so much.
Yeah.
Because again, it's part of this Venn diagram.
Skeletal then, isn't
It is, but again, and these are things that, these aren't all going to be training related. These will be lifestyle related, and then trauma, because again, that's something that people, have no choice. If you're in a road traffic collision and you fracture your tibia, for example, or you injure your pelvis in some way, then there's going to be a knock-on effect, and it's going to take a while. And maybe it never will be perfect, but these are the things that massage can be useful for further down the line, after the initial sort of healing or the main healing process is taking place. Because it can take up to 6 months. After 6 months, you really should be at a point where you're relatively back to normal.
You mentioned the foam rolling before.
Mm-hmm.
How effective is foam rolling versus sports massage therapy? You see a lot of people walking around with foam rollers now.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a lot of people don't know what they're doing with them. They spend a lot of time rolling on them in between the sets. How effective are foam rollers?
I think that it's very similar to massage. It's effective to some people and not to others. I think foam rolling is just self-administered massage, and you can do it, and it can be effective, and that's why there's the varying densities of foam rollers.
Would you say it's safe to do in between doing like powerlifting, for example, in between like heavy sets? Because
No,
from what I've learned is that it creates instability, and then that can have a bit of a knock-on effect to something else, like it can
How would it create instability?
So if you're loosening off, I don't know, say the adductor or the hamstring, surely if you've already done mobility that day, for example, and then you're doing sets at that time, you're working up to a top heavy, for example, 200 kilo that day, you're working up to a top lift, it's 90% equal on rep max, and in between each set you're rolling that muscle. Surely that creates some instability.
Well, I don't know about instability, but what I would say is that if you're doing an event, let's say massage, whether it's running or whatever, you shouldn't be doing any sort of deep tissue work, because it's still a form of trauma. It's trying to encourage the healing process, so the inflammatory response and the remodeling of muscle. That's what you're doing when you apply tension or pressure to a muscle.
If you wouldn't recommend it in that sense.
No, I'd recommend it. I think effleurage is
create
fine.
some instability, because
I think it would create vulnerability. I don't know about instability.
Right.
It's what is stability. I think really it's something that I don't think there's an advantage to foam rolling between a set. I think there is. Beforehand, I think you could, because foam rollers, they're not as dense as bone, which is what effectively a sports massage is doing, and thus it's going to give you a greater deep massage potential. But I would say that a foam roller in between a set, unless you were doing it with the purpose of increasing blood flow, I don't think there's a benefit to that. I think it depends. There's probably more chance of being a hindrance than an advantage.
You see people stretching and stuff in between sets as well, and like the same thing. Would you say that's quite dangerous to do as well? If you're already in the middle of doing, I don't know, in the middle of your workout.
I think the honest answer is depends. I think,
Okay, if I was doing deadlifts and I was stretching my hamstrings in between every set, would you say that's safe to do or not safe to do?
It depends on the amount of time and the tension you're doing with a stretch, because it varies. I know with martial artists, for example, who need flexibility, and they will stretch for maybe going on 5 minutes in its extreme, because you need flexibility and able to increase your range when you kick. I think when you're deadlifting, it's not. You need a range of movement. You need a functional range within that lift. So obviously it depends on what technique you use. But I would say that I don't think being overly flexible, because again you're stretching your fibres, and in theory you're going to reduce its contractile tension. So what is power? It's speed quickly, and it's contractual force. So if you're reducing the force potential,
Then it creates weakness.
potentially, but again,
It could.
it
Depends on the
depends. If you're
circumstances.
bodybuilding, or if you're doing hypertrophy work, then stretching in between sets, you might encourage a bit more flow, and you might encourage the fibres to stretch to then enable them to be worked more effectively in the next set. So that, I don't think stretching for, and then time comes into play. So I think stretching for 10-15 seconds isn't going to be a problem, but I think stretching for prolonged periods will be a problem. And
Development
is just
type
depends.
stretching.
Yeah. So I think it just depends.
Interesting. Okay, so you've been doing the sports massage now for about a year officially, did you say? What's the market like? What's it like being in business as a sports massage therapist? Because it's competitive, and there's a lot of sports massage therapists out there. So how do you stand out in the crowd? Because everyone's doing sports massage therapy these days.
Well, I think the key to anything is that you constantly learn. And I mean, learning at a high standard, not just posting pictures, which is what I see a lot of people do. I think, in all honesty, I'm nowhere near at a level where I'd be really comfortable proclaiming to be an expert, because I think the moment you think you're an expert, that's where you go wrong. I think you just need to keep enhancing your CPD. So it's very competitive, because it's not, hand on heart, very difficult to become a level 3 qualified massage therapist, because it's very, although it's an A-level standard, and what the college sold to me was that the diploma was better than a certificate, which is what was previously given out. You know, when I finished the course, did I have an understanding of massage techniques? Yes. Did I have a real fundamental, or greater knowledge of anatomy? Probably better than when I walked in, but not a great deal. So what people do very well, and I'm going to quote them all, technique, is nobody is as good as me, we've just got better marketing schemes. And I think what a lot of sports massage therapists are great at is selling themselves and proclaiming that they know what they're doing, and because they're feeding off people's lack of knowledge in the area. I think for me, which is evidenced by how much I charge in relation to a lot of people, that is an example that I don't consider myself the best at it, but I will aspire to. So the work of Dr. Malley, which is what I follow, is massage technique library, which I try and watch as much as I can. Eric Dalton's work, master of massage, you know, I'm trying to learn from him as well, but also I'm trying to achieve this physio degree, which I think will help this, but I think physio is, well, much more advanced, but I think that'll help me learn more. But I'm trying to learn more about this, because I think people who are in the massage world now, certainly in this local area, it's just, you know, they don't understand why they're doing things, they don't understand what PNF stretch really does, they don't understand some other techniques and when to use them. So I think what tries to set me out is I'm quite honest with people, and I will talk them through. I've had people come in here and say, go and speak to your GP. You know, if this doesn't work, that's fine. You know, I can recommend other people. But I think at my level, level 3, it's much of a muchness. It's who you sort of gravitate towards. But I think going forward, which a lot of people don't do, is they actually go and legitimately get some proper CPD. So I've been to a few seminars in Manchester. I'm obviously doing, was going to do level 4, but that's included with what I'm doing now anyway. So I'm going to put that to one side. But I think if you're looking for someone who's not aspiring to get better in terms of your qualifications and your CPD, then I think they're just really good at marketing. So I think the challenge is that you've got to demonstrate value to people. And I hope I do that, but I think I'm lucky in so much as I've sort of found a niche here, and I'm able to really, you know, hone a craft and skill. But I'm still near the bottom. You know, I need to keep learning myself.
So there's a lot of frauds out there. When you mentioned about people who are really good at marketing themselves and taking pictures and stuff like that. So are these the sort of people who aren't necessarily great at what they're doing?
Well, I think
if someone's looking to get a sports medal, you know, book in for a sports massage, would you say that is an indicator for them just to like do a little bit more research, if it's just all about the pictures and the marketing and stuff like that?
Well, I think start with why. So when you're going to see someone, anyone, myself included, you should be asking why are you doing that, and someone should be able to answer. It may not be the right answer, but they'll be able to answer, and from their answer you can usually get an idea of whether they actually know what they're talking about.
Same with coaching as well.
Yeah.
Nice philosophy.
Well, it start with why. Why are you powerlifting? Why are you getting a massage? What, you know, go from there, and then you ask that person. And again, you know, if someone truly wants to get better at anything, then they have to look internally and build on it. Massage is no different. I qualify with people who were terrible. I wasn't particularly great myself. I think there were a few standout people in my class, but they went on and expanded their knowledge base, so they went on to level 4.
Okay.
That to me would make me want to go to them. The person who massages me, who I don't think I pronounced the name wrong, but anyway, she's by far the best that I've had anyway. But she's very expensive. She works in the Titanic Hotel now.
There we go. Fantastic.
Job here, if you're listening. But she's been doing this for over 6 years, maybe more. Works to a very high standard. Understands the anatomy to a level that she can answer your questions. That's important, which is what I try to do. And every session I improve a little bit more, whether it's a technique or whether it's a bit more understanding of where things are in the body.
Interesting. Okay, so we are coming towards the end now, so and I did have a few more points and questions that I wanted to run by you, so bit of quick fire.
Go.
What are you working on at the moment?
Getting better at physio.
Okay, and what's coming in the future? You mentioned physio. What
Yes.
else?
So I'm currently studying my physio degree, which is incredible, and I'm so sad that I didn't do this earlier.
Fantastic.
For the future, just get better at being able to diagnose people. You'll never be perfect, but I think if you have the principles in place, you'll be able to offer a greater, whether it's a service to people or do a service for people.
So you're going to go down the physio route, and the sports massage therapy is going to complement that.
I think
basically,
so.
which is going to help you with standing out from the crowd even more so as a sports massage therapist. What are your top recovery tips for an athlete, like a high performing athlete?
Drink water.
Why?
Well, it helps hydration. It helps your bodily functions. You know, we're on the spot now, but your cellular repair and whatnot. You need water. We're comprised.
The number one, isn't it?
Is it? I always get this wrong. Is it 90%, 96%? What is it?
Muscles is like, I think muscles is like 80, body 60.
But I already look like an idiot. But basically, you're mostly water. So without that, we can't function properly. And obviously, for cellular activity to take place, we need water. We need fats and all that. So yeah, I'd say water is important. Lubrication of joints, of course. I think also maybe, and again, not even necessarily myself, because I don't think I'm the best at this either, but having someone who can look at you objectively and identify postural problems that you may have, I think that is important for recovery. Because again, you know how much do you spend on coffee a week? You know, $2.30 at Costa. You know, so you drink that 5 times a day, it's a tenner. Some people charge £15 to do a postural analysis, and then you've got a base to work on.
What's your recovery strategy involve? Yours personally?
I would say trying to relax is a really good recovery strategy, because again, if you're really tense and you're really stressed, you're gonna adopt all these poor postural. Yeah, well, you do. And I think it's just staying hydrated. I think is one of the biggest challenges now, especially when you work in an area where you're not really sitting down very often. You're always on your feet.
People get everything else right, but then not the most basic thing, like drinking water or drinking enough water.
Well, it's not sexy, is it? Cook down, John. It's not sexy. The things that work aren't sexy because we're all
so
looking.
Basic as
well, we're looking again. I love Dan John's a bit, as you can probably tell, but I think we're all trying to do the 1% instead of doing the things that 99% of us should do. You know, drink water, eat vegetables, eat like an adult. You know, sleep well, sleep restfully, drink socially. You know, don't binge. But it's all the basics of recovery strategies for me, and I try and do this as anyways, to eat well and sleep right.
I think we could definitely talk for at least another hour or two here. We could get stuck into all these topics really easily.
I hope it's been interesting.
A lot more to talk about. We've been chatting. This is the longest episode we've ever done. So thanks very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure, and about time as well.
About time, but this hasn't been as entertaining as we hoped. But I'd say this:
it's been really good, mate. Honestly.
The next time I'm on here, I'll be much more knowledgeable. So let's give that a whirl.
Hopefully you've learned something from that, guys. You can catch us on YouTube, you can catch us on Instagram, Facebook if you're watching, and if you're listening, all your favourite podcast platforms like iTunes, Spotify, and various other ones. But if you've got any questions for Danny or questions for us in regards to recovery, strength sports, strategies for your recovery, then get in touch with us. You can get in touch with me personally, danny@taylorstrength.co.uk. You can get in touch with Danny Staples. How can we get in touch with you, Danny?
You can find me on my Facebook page, which is DS Sports Massage. I've got a great logo, so you can't miss it. Also, there's the Instagram page, which is DS Sports Massage Biz. That's B-I-Z, so it's DS Sports Massage Biz, one word. And I think you can probably find me via Taylor Strength Training's group page. Every now and then I'll post a little tidbit in there. And by every now and then, I mean every 4 months. But I am in there, so you can find me at Taylor Strength as well.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Dan.
I feel like this was an enterprise that I should have taken part in earlier.
Absolutely.
And
It's
Ben
a wrap.
Stables, good night.
Thanks, guys.
It sucked.